Put that down. Drop the pencil now.
Now!
Drop it, or we'll drop you. Again, you trying to stab us? What? You trying to stab us?
What is wrong with you?
In March of 2025, Colorado woman Jessica Hoff faced dozens of charges including criminal negligence in an at-risk person's death. The 47-year-old lived in Colorado City along with her mother, LaVon, who suffered from severe dementia and needed round-the-clock care. On February the 3rd of 2025, the Pueblo County Sheriff's Office responded to reports of an unconscious woman at the property. Upon their arrival, officers found several dogs running loose and LaVon dead. As confirmed by an autopsy, she'd been mauled by the pets. The official cause of death was exsanguination due to canine-induced trauma injuries, which basically meant that she'd bled to death after she was repeatedly bitten. In spite of her mother's vulnerable condition, Jessica had left her alone to run errands in Pueblo, about 25 miles away. Deputies additionally found 24 dogs and 7 birds that were caged at the residence. The search of a second property owned by Jessica produced 54 more dogs and birds. They were found to be living in unsanitary conditions, and several of the dogs were in poor health. It remained unclear if Jessica's ownership of the animals was for personal or commercial reasons. Aside from the charges pertaining to her mother's death, the woman was also charged with 54 counts of animal cruelty. Number 8. Carole and David Howell. 82-year-old Barbara Bean died on January the 2nd of 2015 at the home she shared with her sister Carole and the latter's son David Howell in Greenville, South Carolina. Carole told first responders that Barbara had refused to eat for a few hours before her death. They watched a soap opera together in the woman's bedroom, and at some point, 74-year-old Carole went to the kitchen. Upon returning, she found her sister slumped in her chair without a pulse. Barbara, who couldn't move on her own, had been abandoned in filth and agony for at least 6 months. She wasn't wearing pants and had indentations on the back of her legs from sitting for so long. The chair in which she'd been abandoned was saturated with urine and feces. The smell inside the residence was reported as being so bad that firefighters set up a fan by the door as they worked on removing Barbara from the home. The Greenville County Coroner's Office ruled Barbara's death a homicide by neglect, noting that she'd passed away from a blood clot in her lung. The woman had developed deep vein thrombosis due to her prolonged immobility. 43-year-old David and his mother were arrested on January the 21st and charged with abuse or neglect, resulting in the death of a vulnerable adult. David was arrested over a dozen times since the early 1990s for offenses that included drug possession, making obscene phone calls, and criminal domestic violence. As of the latest information on the case, he remained jailed, while his mother was released on a personal recognizance bond. Number 7. Verphy Cudi. On December the 5th of 2019, English teenager Verphy Cudi left her Brighton apartment to celebrate her 18th birthday with her boyfriend in London. On the 7th, she had a DJ announce her birthday while attending a concert in Elephant and Castle in South London. The celebrations continued, and 2 days later, Cudi went to a friend's birthday party in Coventry. On the 10th, she returned to London and the following day headed back to her home in Brighton. At that point, she called the emergency services to report that her young daughter, Aster, wasn't waking up. First responders would find that she had died from a combination of starvation and influenza after Cudi had abandoned her for 6 days to go out partying. The team was arrested and she ultimately admitted manslaughter. In August of 2021, she was jailed for 9 years. Speaking of Aster's torment, Judge Christine Lang QC told Cudi during sentencing, "It is almost unbearable to contemplate her suffering in the final days of her life. Suffering that she endured so that you could celebrate your birthday and the birthdays of your friends as a carefree teenager." An inquest was launched to determine if the various professionals at the supported accommodation where Aster was abandoned could have done anything to prevent her death in spite of her mother's negligence. Evidence indicated that Cudi had left her daughter alone at the apartment up to 6 times in the 2 months leading up to her death, and that no one knew she was doing so. Aster's maternal grandmother only found out that she'd been abandoned when the case went to trial. The East Sussex senior coroner stated, "The circumstances of Aster's death could not have been predicted. Verphy's acts were criminal and not normal behavior." The conclusion was that the girl had been unlawfully killed by her mother. Number 6. Aster Healthcare Limited. In the fall of 2021, Aster Healthcare Limited was fined over £1 million to be paid over a period of 3 years after pleading guilty to corporate manslaughter in the death of 93-year-old Francis Norris. One of the company's subsidiaries, Southern County Care Limited, ran the Birdsgrove Nursing Home in Thames Valley, England. Norris had been a resident at the nursing home for roughly 2 years. The woman who relied on her carers for every aspect of her daily routine was given a bath on February the 5th of 2015. Helping her were 2 workers, one of whom was inexperienced, and the other was Noel Mader. The temperature of the water wasn't checked properly, resulting in more hot water being added while the elderly woman was in the bath. She sustained severe burns. 3 days later, on February the 8th, Norris died of bronchopneumonia at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. Her passing was determined to have been a direct result of the injuries sustained during the scalding bath. Police launched an investigation that uncovered multiple safety violations at the home. The bath in question wasn't fitted with the correct type of thermostatic mixing valve, which would have enabled water to be emitted at a safe temperature. Moreover, the valve that was installed had not been serviced and wasn't working properly. It emerged that regulating the hot water had been a long-standing problem at the Birdsgrove nursing home. The care that Norris received after the incident was also not acceptable due to inadequate training provided to staff. Thames Valley law enforcement also established that management provided false documents to the police and partner agencies in an attempt to mislead the investigation. Birdsgrove was shut down in 2016. Manager Elizabeth West and carer Mader each pleaded guilty to 1 count of failure to discharge a duty under health and safety regulations. West was sentenced to 9 months in custody, suspended for 18 months, while Mader was given a sentence of 16 weeks, also suspended for 18 months. Number 5. Fartun Jamal. On February the 22nd of 2019, English Social Services went to the northwest London home of Fartun Jamal after concerns had been raised by 2 babysitters that the woman was improperly caring for her young daughter, Nafahat. Jamal, who was at the time in her early 20s, was officially told about the visit, and when child services arrived, the apartment was clean and the situation had improved from previous reports. A second, unannounced visit was scheduled for March the 13th. By then, unfortunately, it would be too late. That very day, a neighbor called the emergency services to the Brent Park residence, claiming that Nafahat was unwell. First responders were taken aback by the smell of urine. As soon as they walked through the door, in Nafahat's bedroom, human excrement smeared the walls and window. The girl's cot, which was broken and too small for her, was drenched in urine. Nafahat was unresponsive in her bed, and in spite of efforts from paramedics, she couldn't be revived. The cause, as medics later found, was an entirely treatable respiratory tract infection. Jamal would have likely been aware that her daughter was in distress and experiencing poor appetite as well as an elevated temperature. She nevertheless went out partying just days before her daughter's death and didn't seek help for her. Providing Nafahat with medical assistance would have required little effort. A GP surgery was roughly 70 yards from where she died and visible from her bedroom window. There were further indications that Jamal was unconcerned by her daughter's well-being. There was little food in the home, which was littered with rotting takeaway products, dirty plates and used diapers in carrier bags. Jamal told first responders that she had found Nafahat's body after having a dream that her daughter had stopped breathing. The woman, whose own room had mouse droppings and human excrement inside, had previously made concerning internet searches. They included, "I can't cope with my child anymore," and "I want to give up my child." Jamal was arrested on multiple charges, including causing her daughter's death by neglect and 2 counts of child cruelty. During the trial that followed, she stated that her behavior stemmed from her abusive upbringing in Somalia. She also claimed that she suffered anxiety and depression due to being a parent with little support. Referring to Nafahat, Jamal told the court, "I instantly fell in love with her the moment I got hold of her." That statement was contrasted about the squalid scene at her apartment, where officers didn't find a single toy or photo of Nafahat. On March the 4th of 2022, Jamal was found guilty on all counts. In April, she was jailed for 5 years and 6 months at Harrow Crown Court. Number 4. Kristian White. In the early hours of May the 17th of 2023, Australian law enforcement was called to the Yallambi Lodge Aged Care Facility in Cooma to assist with a disoriented resident who was wandering through the property and entering other residents' rooms while carrying knives. Senior Constable Kristian White and his partner, Sergeant Jessica Pank, arrived at the scene along with paramedics. Officers approached the resident in question, 95-year-old Claire Nowland, after she'd reached a nurse's room in the administrative wing of the care facility. The frail woman, who weighed about 100 pounds, was moving around with the help of a walker and had a serrated knife in her hand. She disregarded multiple commands to drop the weapon and inched her way towards the emergency responders. Pank said, "I think I can get the knife off her," and White responded that he'd cover her. Nowland raised the knife at Pank 3 times when she tried to approach her. White discharged a warning from his taser and, about 20 seconds later, said, "Stop. Just, nah, bugger it," and fired the electric probes which struck the elderly woman. She let go of the walker, fell hard and hit her head. As seen in body cam footage, White then told Pank to retrieve the knife. The taser had been deployed within 3 minutes of the officers making contact with the elderly resident. After Nowland dropped, White crouched next to her and told Claire, come on, you're all right. The woman suffered an inoperable brain bleed as a result of the fall and died in a hospital a week later. White was determined to have used excessive force by deploying his taser on Nowland and was charged in connection to her death. During his trial, a geriatrician noted that Nowland suffered from dementia and was therefore unable to understand what was happening to her and to comply with instructions. As a result of her condition, she'd made several attempts to escape the nursing home. She would also become agitated and aggressive. The court was shown CCTV footage of her climbing into a tree and getting stuck. Another clip showed her ramming a resident with her walker. At the time of her death, Nowland had been prescribed with antipsychotic risperidone to help reduce her aggression. A police sergeant who trained New South Wales officers on firearms, defense tactics, and use of force testified that deploying a taser on a knife-wielding suspect was an appropriate response. However, the officer noted that elderly or disabled persons were to be considered exceptional circumstances. White was aware of that aspect. On the morning after the incident, he had a talk with a colleague, which the latter recorded in the police database. White told him, I've had a look and supposedly, we aren't meant to tase elderly people, but in the circumstance, I needed to. White added, maybe this will be my first critical incident. In November of 2024, a New South Wales Supreme Court jury found White guilty of manslaughter in connection to Nowland's death. The offence carried a maximum sentence of 25 years in prison. But Justice Ian Harrison considered that giving the man a custodial sentence would be disproportionate to the objective seriousness of the offence. In Harrison's view, the former officer had misread and misunderstood the dynamics of the situation while motivated by an honest but mistaken and unreasonable assessment of the threat at hand. The judge further argued that White wasn't a danger to the community and that as a former law enforcement officer, he would have a difficult time behind bars. In March of 2025, White was given a 2-year community corrections order with conditions that included 425 hours of community service and reporting to a community corrections officer. One of Nowland's 8 children described the decision as a slap on the wrist for someone that's killed her mother. Subsequent information on the case indicated that prosecutors were appealing the sentence. Number 3, Michael Burch.
Put that down. Drop the pencil now.
Now!
Drop it or we'll drop you. Right there. You trying to stab us? What? You trying to stab us?
What is wrong with you?
69-year-old Michael Burch, a former California prison guard, was arrested in Horrifying County, Colorado on March the 25th of 2023. He was charged with felony menacing and harassment. Burch, who lived in Walsenburg, was reported to have recently exhibited strange behavior and appeared to be experiencing a mental health crisis. His arrest stemmed from an incident in which he approached strangers at their home while speaking nonsensically and swinging a rubber mallet. Burch's mental health was not assessed when he was booked at the Horrifying County Jail. Staff initially provided him with a pencil so he could draw and take notes, but on March the 28th, they told Burch that they would have to take it back out of concerns that he would use it as a weapon. Staff opened the door to his cell, but Burch refused to let go of the pencil upon being ordered to do so by Lieutenant Stuart Pino. The latter threatened, drop it or we'll drop you, while a colleague had a stun gun pointed at Burch. Shortly thereafter, Burch was tased and he launched towards Pino. A body cam recorded struggle ensued and it culminated with Pino holding the 5'9", 167-pound inmate's arms and taking him down. In doing so, Pino slammed Burch's right side against a steel bench, breaking 6 of his ribs. In the body cam footage, Burch moaned, "Help me, Dad. Help me, Mum." Within a week, he would be dead. In 2025, his estate filed a federal lawsuit against the Horrifying County Sheriff's Office and a number of other entities who were accused of being criminally negligent in connection to his death. In the aftermath of the brutal takedown, local paramedics arrived at the scene and did a cursory check on Burch. He asked to be taken to a hospital, telling them, "My ribs are crushed and pain is really coming. Get me out of here."
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I see. You still got a hold of me, right? Good. In the name of Jesus Christ.
You didn't even go in?
Now, stand behind me.
So that was on me then?
Get behind me.
Verse.
Let go.
I need the verse.
All
We got a good view.
the last 2 hands. Let go in the name of Jesus Christ. Now. Let go.
Okay, we'll get right to that,
They
man.
don't want to hurt you. That's the whole problem.
Only two in
Just two. Yep,
Well,
that was
I
it.
say hurt them, okay?
So I don't know if you want to take a look anywhere else because he was tackled.
Can I have you
No, you know what it's all about? It's all about love, isn't it?
Hey, Michael, it's Sam again. Hey, buddy. I'm the paramedic. What's going on, man? Can we check you out?
Body cam footage showed one paramedic briefly lifting up Burch's shirt, but the lawsuit claimed that no one took his vital signs or listened to his lungs with a stethoscope. He was not transported to an emergency room and only moved to an adjacent cell at the jail. Burch spent the days that followed in excruciating pain. With each breath he took, the shattered bones dug deeper into his organs until his right lung collapsed. Burch repeatedly cried out for help but was ignored. Qusayr Mohammed, one of the lawyers representing Burch's estate, said, "It's the slow, painful death of a man in a cage, which I have simply never seen in Colorado before." When Burch told the jail captain that he'd barely made it through the night on April the 1st, he was seen over video by a nurse. According to the lawsuit, the nurse primarily focused on Burch's mental health and didn't ask to see his chest. 3 days later, on April the 4th, he was found dead on the concrete floor of his cell. His autopsy concluded that his passing was a result of blunt force trauma to the chest and abdomen. The injuries were confirmed to have occurred when he was tased and wrestled to the ground by law enforcement, striking his right chest and flank at the Huerfano County Jail. Burch's death was ruled a homicide, but prosecutors declined to bring charges against Pino or anyone else involved in the incident, with District Attorney Henry Solano citing self-defense laws. It wasn't clear if anyone was ever disciplined for what happened to Burch, and some reports indicated that Pino was subsequently promoted. Mohammed told the media, "This is gulag-type behavior that simply should not exist anywhere." The lawsuit was ongoing as of the latest updates on the case.
As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and maybe it will be your video that we'll be doing next.
Number 2. Case of Laura Winham. On May the 24th of 2021, the skeletal and mummified remains of 41-year-old Laura Winham were found at her home in Woking, Surrey, England. Loved ones had asked cops to break into the home out of concern for her well-being. Winham's partially decomposed body was uncovered almost 4 years after she'd passed away, with the exact cause and time of death being impossible to ascertain. There was no food in the home, and her calendar had the dates crossed off until November the 1st of 2017. Winham's relatives had last seen her in person in 2009, and communication over social media stopped in 2014 as per the woman's wishes. Winham struggled with schizophrenia, and the family reportedly believed they were doing what was best for her by maintaining their distance. Her sister said, "We knew that contact with us exacerbated her mental health difficulties." The family nevertheless often passed by her home to check that her car was still outside. A 2025 inquest found that there were lost opportunities for multiple agencies to intervene and help Winham. In 2014, she was referred for mental health treatment after staff at her housing association saw that she was unwell, quite thin, had no friends, and believed people were watching her. In October of 2017, the police referred her to Surrey County Adult Social Care. A team called and wrote to Winham informing her about food banks but never visited the property. Their investigation into the vulnerable woman's well-being was described as perfunctory in almost every way. A statement read on behalf of her family stated that they were devastated by the circumstances of her passing, adding, "Laura's death must act as a catalyst for change." Number 1. Sheila and Clay Fletcher. On January the 3rd of 2022, Sheila and Clay Fletcher called first responders to their ranch-style property in Slaughter, Louisiana, reporting that their daughter, 36-year-old Lacey, had stopped breathing. Emergency workers were unable to revive her, and the scene that they found in the home would reportedly leave some of them traumatized and struggling to eat or sleep. Lacey, who was emaciated and weighed less than 100 pounds, was partially naked and submerged in a hole in the living room couch. She was covered in her own urine and liquid feces. While Lacey was still alive, maggots and bugs had eaten away at parts of her body. The presence of rodent droppings suggested that other animals had gnawed away at her rotting flesh. According to first responders, the smell in the home was unbearable. Lacey's body had essentially melted into the couch and fused to the leather cushions after she hadn't been moved for at least 12 years. Aside from severely atrophied muscles, Lacey had bed sores that went down to her bones, causing critical infections. East Feliciana Parish Coroner Dr. Ewell DeWitt Bickham told a media outlet the scene was sickening. "I have seen some horrible things in my life, but nothing like this." The woman was autistic and had reportedly experienced bullying at high school, at which point Sheila and Clay opted for her to be homeschooled. Lacey's health gradually degraded until she developed locked-in syndrome, a rare neurological disorder characterized by paralysis of voluntary muscles, except for those that control the eyes. Her parents became her care providers, but criminally failed in that regard, exhibiting a harrowing degree of negligence. Sheila and Clay last spoke to a doctor about their daughter's condition in 2010. They were advised to bring Lacey to the hospital, but they didn't do so, and they never sought professional help for her again. In the years that followed, the couple would leave Lacey to starve as they went on holiday, and no one was aware of the young woman suffering. Sheila and Clay were well respected in the community, with the former holding a post on the town's board of aldermen. At the time of her daughter's death, the couple's property and home were tidy and well kept. The only exception was the couch where they'd abandoned their daughter in her own filth to be slowly eaten alive by animals. Lacey suffered a chain reaction of starvation, bone infections, and immobility-related afflictions that led to fatal sepsis. Sheila and Clay had left her alone for several days as they went away for the winter holidays. Upon their return, Lacey was unresponsive. The couple were suspected to have waited for up to 2 days before calling 911. They were arrested and charged with second-degree murder before they were offered a plea deal to the lesser charge of manslaughter. The couple's defense team stated they were negligent. Yes, it is clear they were negligent. They loved her to death. That is the true statement with the Fletchers. They loved their daughter to death. Sheila and Clay pleaded no contest to manslaughter in February of 2024. East Feliciana Parish District Attorney Sam Diacquia said they had no choice. This is an open and shut case. They allowed their daughter to suffer unbearably on that couch. On March the 20th of 2024, the couple was sentenced to 20 years with a consecutive 20-year suspended sentence. Thanks for watching. With no limits on type or quantity, would you rather get free food or free clothes? Let us know in the comments section below.